Presiding officer, I think it was Prime Minister Macmillan who was advising a young and up-and-coming Tory MP on his political career, said, and I paraphrase, "Beware events, young man, events." And if you look back at our last debate in forestry, a number of things have happened. In the wider world outside this Parliament, 2 space satellites collided in orbit. We have a new Minister for the Environment, and the Government has dumped plans to lease away a quarter of the Scottish forest estate. I will leave it to others in the Chamber today to weigh up the relative significance and importance of each event, as I am neither young nor up and coming. But since our last debate, Mike Russell, who is seen as, of course, a rising star in the ministerial ranks, has moved on to greater things. And Rosanna Cunningham, who I congratulate on her promotion, it's my first opportunity to do this, was handed the poisoned chalice of the leasing scheme. I'd like to focus, Deputy Presiding Officer, on the leasing scheme briefly, as other members, of course, have done rightly today, and perhaps look at some of the more positive aspects of the forestry agenda, such as joint ventures, which again has been mentioned, and also tackling climate change. So where, Deputy Presiding Officer, did the idea of leasing a quarter of the forest estates for 75 years come from? As again has been mentioned, Deputy Presiding Officer, the scale is breathtaking, around 100,000 hectares, or roughly the size of Fife, with, of course, the knock-on effect of a loss of around 35% of Forestry Commission income. And Mike Russell made it clear in answer to me, to my parliamentary question 20106, and I quote, "Rothschilds approached the Scottish Government with ideas about the National Forest Estate," and quote. Subsequent answers have evidenced that 6 meetings with Rothschilds and ministers and officials took place between October 2007 and July 2008. My Freedom of Information request to see the minutes and records of discussions has not been received within the time limits. Perhaps the Minister, in her winding up, could speak to her officials about this point and perhaps move this on. But I did receive, and I have to be fair in this, at the 11th hour, an analysis of the consultation responses on the leasing scheme, and that, as members again have identified earlier, that nearly 75% of the responses were negative. Perhaps I could just summarise, Deputy Presiding Officer, a couple of the responses. And I quote, "Offering long leases is tantamount to privatisation." And on page 5 of the document, and again I quote, Deputy Presiding Officer, "This land is owned by the people of Scotland and should remain firmly in the control and management of the Forestry Commission." Unquote. There was also a number of other worries, clearly about forestry enterprise jobs, and at least 3,500 people signed the Forestry Commission Trade Union petition. Also worries about creating less predictable wood supply for processors. There was also concerns about the experience of leasing forest estates abroad. Can I perhaps give 2 examples, Deputy Presiding Officer? In New Zealand, leasees went bankrupt and jobs were lost. The Swedish Government sold off much of their national forest estate to a company which again then raised log prices, leading to sawmill bankruptcy. Edward Shepherd, who was the Trade Union Secretary and still is the Trade Union Secretary for the Forestry Commission, predicted that the whole 25% would be given out, quote, "in one whopping great lease," and that's from the Scotsman on the 4th of December last year, to an international investment company. He continued, "Although the Minister, Mr Russell, is not attempting to privatise the land, he would be privatising its management and control," unquote. Presiding Officer, but now that the leasing liability is behind us, I welcome the fact that the Forestry Commission can continue to get on with managing our forests effectively over the decades to come. For example, joint ventures in renewables will provide us with a win-win. Raise funding, it will develop renewables and help towards mitigating climate change. And we all know that timber demand is likely to exceed supply in a few years' time, and of course more trees need to be planted. But in the few seconds I've got left, Deputy Presiding Officer, perhaps the Minister could confirm in her winding up that all new planting should meet the UK forestry standards, including planting not in receipt of grant, as well as work under planning consent. We have a high-value product with strong export potential. Indeed, one final snapshot from the past shows that pulp from Irvine was once exported to Manhattan for the production of Time magazine. By skillful management of the economic, environmental and social dimensions, we can preserve and develop Scotland's rich natural assets. Thank you.